First off, I want to thank all of y'all for coming out on you know, on a night near the end of the semester for us here at Coastal. Appreciate that. And definitely a big thank you to all of our panel who I'll have introduce themselves here in a few minutes. I really appreciate y'all's time as you're probably just finishing your day at work and taking the time out to spend with us and to share your expertise with our students. So just a few announcements to get us going. I'm going to be leading our panel through a series of questions to get us started. But if anyone out there has any questions, first off, feel free to ask them verbally. I know that can be difficult, though, sometimes on Zoom. And the last panel that we had worked nicely was people asking their questions through the chat, and I'll try to keep track of them. And so feel free to just drop some questions in, and I'll try to cover most of those questions whenever it seems like the conversation is leading in that way. So so definitely let us know any questions that you have for the panel. So we'll go ahead and jump right in, and I'm just going to have each of our panel tell us who they are, where they teach at, and what subjects they teach. And we'll go ahead and start with Amber Wooten, because you're on the top of my list as I'm looking down. So Amber, tell us where you are, where you teach.
Well, I teach at Whittemore Park Middle School. I'm teaching 8th grade this year. And I also teach for HCS virtual. So I'm split half and half, in person and online. And I forgot what the last thing was. Subjects? Oh, English. And I also teach social studies.
All right. Thank you, Amber. We have another Amber, Amber Ravenel. So Amber, tell us where you teach at and what subjects you teach.
So currently I do not teach, but last year I taught 6th grade English, but currently I'm a master's student, Master's of Arts of Teaching English here at Coastal. So, yeah.
Okay, and you were teaching in Jacksonville, is that right?
Yes, Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, at a middle school, right? All right, thank you, Amber. And then we have Chris Eaton. So Chris, tell us where you teach and what do you teach?
And I'm sitting in the dark because my auto lights went off and I didn't want to flail around. I'm Chris Eaton. I teach at Blackwater Middle School. I'm the head of the English department here, and I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all the accelerated classes, and I also have an 8th grade honors class.
All right, thanks, Chris. Then we have Lena. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Lena Leonard. I teach 8th grade, co-teach general and honors at St. James Middle School. This is only my second year at the middle school level. Previously, I taught ESOL at the high school level.
Awesome, thank you. And then finally, we have Tommy. I see you were able to change your name too, so that's good.
I did. Thanks to Lena. My name is Thomas Switzer. I work at St. James Middle with Lena. We both teach 8th grade general. I am also split like Amber is between in brick and mortar and virtual school. My virtual school class is English 1, so a high school level advanced English.
For those of you who didn't know before, Tommy's name said Kahoot Test Master before. We weren't quite sure why, but he got that ironed out. So first off, I want to ask for a bit of clarification about some of these terms. So for those of us, especially for our students who are English majors and are not in the education department. Some of these terms may not quite make sense. And someone like me as well, who has not taught, well, not in many, many years, taught in high school, what some of these terms are. So there's a lot of acronyms and names for things that I want to go through and make sure that we understand. So let me go back to Amber Wooten. So this term ELA gets used a lot. So can you explain to us, like, what is ELA, when it is that you teach that, and you know, what does that acronym mean, and what does all that entail?
So ELA stands for English Language Arts. So a lot of the times you'll see ELA start popping up in the middle level grades, and then it goes upward from there. You usually just hear language arts in elementary. But it entails anything from grammar to like your syntax, all the things you're learning, like how the language works on like a basic level. It's not a linguistics class, but you cover those kind of things, as well as like your writing, your reading comprehension. It's English broken down.
All right, very, very good. Thanks, Amber. And then there's a couple of other like terms that some of y'all mentioned that I want to make sure that we all have an understanding of. And gosh, who was it? I think Chris, you mentioned several different. You mentioned this vocational track. In general, can you kind of explain what that might be for us that don't know?
Mine were all the accelerated and honors track, general track, and they're laid out by their test scores pretty much. My accelerated kids are learning 2 years ahead. Like if it's a 6th grade accelerated, they're learning 8th grade honors. No, wait a minute, 8th grade general. If they're 7th grade accelerated, they're learning 8th grade honors. And then my English 1, excuse me, like Tommy said, is a high school credit class. So they're taking their English 1 high school credit course during their 8th grade year.
Yeah, and Tommy, because you were saying that you teach that now, and you teach that on a virtual. So first off, can you talk about that English 1 class, and how is that working? How does the credit sort of work they're taking at the middle school level, and you know, what are some of the challenges and the benefits of teaching that class?
Some of the benefits of teaching the class is you're working with students who are in track to who are not, and it may not just be them. So maybe it's their parents have pushed them to excel, or they are just there because they themselves have pushed themselves to be in an advanced placement class. They are there to learn. They want to learn. For the most part, I will say that. They crave knowledge. It is a higher caliber of learning compared to 8th grade general. And the quality of work, by the time they get to 8th grade, they are writing much better and know the differences between things that 8th graders are struggling with on general. So like my English 1 class tends to know how to compose a sentence properly with subjects and so on. And so it's easier in that regard. On the flip side of that, it takes more intensity as far as grading, because you are really picking it apart to analyze what they're turning in, what they're putting in. And for the most part, so in my class, I have, I think, 35 students. And for the most part, they are all trying their best to put their best foot forward with it. And so I am having to go through and really break down what they're providing me and analyzing not just content because they're getting content, but sometimes its sentence structure might be a little bit off, or comma placement, and really driving home key parts as far as their writing goes.
All right, thanks, Tommy. Lena, I wanted to ask you about ESOL, and that you're not teaching it now, but you had previously, right, at the high school. So can you explain to us first off what those letters mean, and then what?
Yeah, so ESOL is English to speakers of other languages. In other states, it might be called like ESL, but here it's ESOL. And there we just provided academic support and help students in their language acquisition. And that was a term I first learned in Dr. Hastie's linguistics class.
And how did you get into doing ESOL? What did you have to
When
get
I completed my internship at Carolina Forest High School, the ESOL coordinator had reached out and asked if I was interested in a long-term sub position, and I was, and ended up falling in love with the program and the kids, and it was just an awesome experience.
And then Amber Ravenel, so you had worked with this this group called Save the Children.
Yes.
So can you speak a little bit about that and what you did in that organization? So this was right when you first got into teaching.
So right after I graduated with an English degree, I wanted to work in schools, but I didn't kind of know what to do yet. So they taught me about this program called Save the Children. And what it is it's kind of like an outreach program that kind of supplements children that can't get into first steps and getting into early school. I can't remember what it's called, so they don't have enough. So what we do is kind of like take children from the community and we kind of talk to them about reading skills, and we also talk with parents as well, because we work with children 0 to 5, and we work with parents as well. So we would work on reading skills, and we would teach like different parenting techniques as far as creating safe spaces for their children, and also creating safe spaces within the community to kind of connect parents of communities together and have with different meetings. And we would do, I guess, book bag exchange with the kindergarten class of a certain satellite school. So they would give them books to exchange and read with their parents and stuff. And we would give them prizes and toys. So different things. It was just little small things working together. It was really cute.
Awesome. And this was in South Carolina, is that right? So you were in North South Carolina, the city of, it's always a weird when you talk about North South Carolina, but so is that a program then like that's confined to South Carolina? Is it national?
It is national. It is national. So we actually did a program that there's like different ones. They're based like, there's one for the South, there's some up north, and there's some more west. So there's some in Tennessee, there's some in Florida, there's some in Alabama. So different rural areas. It's trying to target more rural areas.
Great. And just a few more questions about this, because it's something that I wasn't familiar with, and I don't know how many other people out there in the crowd were. So is this a program that that you need to have like a teaching degree to get into, or what do you need to start with this?
I was actually the amongst the people that were early childhood coordinators, I actually had the highest amount of education, which was a bachelor's degree. You didn't need a bachelor's or anything to become an early childhood coordinator. You just have to join in, and they give you a certain trial program where they teach you all the different modules, because they give you the lessons that you're supposed to go and teach the parents. It's not like you have to come up with your own lessons like when you do when you're teaching. So it's kind of like, oh, this is for 0 to 3 and you want to do a module. Say the parents want a module on bottle feeding. So you would go and pick a module on bottle feeding, and you would do that with them. And they also have different activities to do as well. So it's a lot more, so if you're not a teacher, at least you have a blueprint kind of model handed out for you. So that was kind of helpful going into being a teacher later.
Awesome. Um, and you had communicated to me earlier another acronym that I actually had to look up. So I want to uh, there's a lot of these acronyms that get used in education. So I want to disambiguate as much of this as possible for us and our students. So you had taught at Fletcher Middle School in Jacksonville. You mentioned that you had taught ESE. Can you explain what is ESE and what that is?
So it's basically students that have exceptionalities. So basically ESC is just talking about exceptionality, whether it's a learning disability or it's a behavior disability, anything that requires students to have an IEP or a 504, they get put into ESC classes. So it was kind of different because they kind of included the scores in Florida were based off this test called like the FCAT test, or and their FCAT scores are 1 through 5. So if you get a 0 to 2, you're kind of considered ESC for the most part. So they put you in classes based on your what you got on that FCAT score. So if you have higher, usually you're an advanced or gifted, and you're in the middle, you're kind of standard or kind of advanced. So they put you in classes based on that. But mostly ESC is for students with exceptionalities.
And then I wanted to speak to Chris because Chris has been an educator for definitely the longest on our panel. And you're actually the chair right now of the English department at Blackwater Middle. That's right. So can you talk a little bit then about like the administration? What do you do as an English department chair there, and like what are some of the challenges of being a teacher, as you see it from your administrative point in a middle school?
Well, mostly I work with the curriculum coach to work with the members of my department. The district gives us planned units so they give us the content, and it's up to each teacher to decide how they present that content. We have certain goals that we have to meet. And so we collaborate weekly as a department with the curriculum coach and make sure that everybody's on track to get all of the content in and to meet all of the goals for the standards that are associated with each unit. And then I also have a monthly department meeting where we air out all their concerns and everything. And one of the main challenge would be the turnover rate for teachers in general. And I'm sure everybody on the panel can probably attest to this. Once people have been under my tutelage, I guess, for a couple of years, they kind of get with the program and how I operate things. I'm very stringent about staying on pace because I know all of the stuff that we get thrown at us and having to deliver all of the content, and especially in this hybrid model that we're in, is a challenge. So I try to keep people on pace so that they can deliver the content, and then make sure that we get all of the testing done and all of the different assessments that we have to do to make sure that the kids are on track and reaching their learning goals.
Great. And you mentioned something else in another position that that would like to get some clarification on. So you mentioned a curriculum coach. So what is a curriculum coach, and who is that, and what do they do? What's their role?
Mine is Robin Hardwick, and the curriculum coach works with all of the teachers to make sure that they understand the goals in their curriculum, and she meets with them every week as well. And we'll help them go in, or she can go in their room and be a co-teacher to help them with stuff. And I'm lucky in that mine was a top 5 teacher of the year candidate, and she's amazing. Like, she's a math teacher, but she will come in my English class and just blow them away with, she's amazing. But she keeps everybody on track and helps the department heads to make sure that everybody is meeting their goals. And and you know, it's all about the kids. So if we can meet our goals, then we can get the kids to their goals, and that's to facilitate that is her main job.
Great, thanks. I want to circle back to Amber Wooten. You had brought up, I think you were at least the first one that brought up the virtual teaching in the I forget whatever it's called here in Horry County, the online school. Is that right? Is that how I understood it?
Yeah, it's called HCS Virtual.
Yeah. So can you talk about teaching in that and how that works for you? How do you do that along with being a brick and mortar teacher as well?
My first answer, initial reaction to that is carefully, but in reality, so with HCS Virtual, it's a very rigorous program that's completely online. It's designed to be completely asynchronous so that the kids can do this at a time that works for them. The HCS Virtual isn't new. It's been around since 2008, but previously to get into it, you had to go through a different process. You got to be a specific kind of person, a specific kind of student to really thrive in a completely online format like that, I believe. So it has a different LMS, which is a learning management system. Most people know Google Classroom, or maybe Canvas or Blackboard, things like that, Moodle. So this is a different one. It's called Buzz, and it's completely synced to their actual grade book. So that's something different than what is in brick and mortar kind of land of what we have to deal with. We usually have to import those grades ourselves. But it's very interesting. There's a lot of modules built into it, and it auto grades things that are like multiple choice, but things that are written obviously get sent to your teacher for them to grade. So it's kind of a mix. We also do live meetings, kind of like this. We use Google Meet, so twice a week for them to come and actually have a class, so they get to see their teacher and see each other. So we try to make it as like brick and mortar as we can, so they don't lose like that connection with their peers or any of that. So it's a delicate balance, and it's difficult for a lot of kids, but those who are really engaged or have like that kind of dedicated personality, they're thriving.
Great, and let me bring in Tommy on this as well to get your input, because you mentioned that you're also teaching virtual. So what would you add to that, Tommy, about teaching in virtual, and how does that work as far as your time devoted to the virtual school and to the actual brick and mortar school?
It takes a lot of balance and self-checking. There are times where I will get stuck in brick and mortar world, where I'm helping the students who are sitting in front of me every day. And I have, especially at the beginning, I was sliding on my virtual students, and I'm like, no, that I need to recalibrate my teaching. And so I would shift back, and it's a constant balance. So where I have a student I can just talk to, and with hybrid especially, it also shifts things. So I have a student who is in my virtual class who is much more, needs one-on-one much more than I would say the majority of the rest of my virtual students. And so I find myself constantly being available and open to him, to the student, to walk through those tough parts for him, to help him through those lessons, and not being face to face, not sitting beside him or sitting beside the student as we are working through a writing piece, has its challenges. It's difficult to do that sometimes in person, to do it virtually, not having their full attention, not knowing if you have their full attention, causes a space in between, some distance that's unfortunate. There are some great things, the idea that the asynchronous part, that the students can work on it themselves. And I have students who are desperately wanting to fly ahead in the course and are constantly asking me, hey, can you open up this module? And can we jump ahead? And I have to restrict them and hold them back. And then sometimes I feel like, why am I holding them back? Like they are advancing, but to keep them on task and to keep it level for myself, so I'm not going crazy, I have to keep them held back regardless of how fast they're advancing through the material. But it has its own challenges, and balancing, I think, is probably the most important piece. I know that without Lena and having an awesome support staff as well, I work with another amazing teacher on my end who teaches English 1, and to have that open communication is extremely important with other teachers, so that you know how to combat what is going on, what your students are struggling with.
Yeah, and since you mentioned that, I'm gonna bring Lena back in. Can you talk a little bit about that collaboration? Because I mean that's something that's perhaps a bit new or unknown to our students. That there's a lot of collaboration amongst teachers. I don't know how you're grouped. Are you like forced or asked to do this sort of collaboration? So can you talk about that, Alina?
Yeah, so we meet for each prep that we teach, or each course that we teach, we meet with the other teachers who teach those same courses every week. So here we have, most people have 2 preps, so you meet with the same teachers who teach those same preps once a week. So twice a week we're meeting. And normally it is more than the 2 times, because normally we flesh out ideas, or things are changing depending on what students' needs are. I'm constantly calling Thomas on the weekend and saying, I know we spent an hour creating our lesson plans for the week, but I think we need to scrap it all and start over again, because what our kids need. But it is a true collaboration where it's just like this think tank, and someone will say, hey, I have an idea. And then someone else will say, okay, let's take this idea and do this with it. And it's just constantly, providing, I guess, the best, coming up with the best lessons that we can for students. Like they said, the district does provide us with the curriculum, and then it's up to us for how, he said before, how we deliver it. But we do try to find really creative ways, especially in this time, to deliver the content to students.
So yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration and help, people helping each other out. So I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction to get kind of a sort of day-to-day picture of what it looks like inside of a typical sort of ELA class. So let me go back to Amber Ravenel. So when you were teaching, I know that you're not currently, but when you were teaching before in Jacksonville, what was your sort of typical day look like? And we'll just I'll go through the panel and try to get like a good picture for us to sort of understand what goes on in the ELA classroom.
So in Florida, our school started, like the middle school started at 9:20. So I didn't have to get there until 8:30, but I would get there earlier. I would get there around 8 o'clock. So I would get up in the morning, and it would take me about 20 minutes to get to school, but I would get there around 8 o'clock so I can make sure that I had my lesson ready. And, I was a new first-year teacher, so there was always that initial panic, that initial just, cry that I had to do in the morning just to get my nerves out. And I would just get my classroom ready, usually getting the warm-up that they had to do, whatever it is, or whatever lesson that I was working on, just make sure I had all of that together in the morning. And usually also the kids would start coming around 8:45. And normally I would like to have time to myself, but the kids like to come in the morning and talk about their feelings and stuff. So I had to be there, make sure I was ready for that too. So, and besides that, my classes were not 90 minutes, mine were 60, and I had 6 classes. So, but pretty much besides, I taught advanced, ESC, and standard. And I was teaching the same thing, but it was just different paced. So I would just make sure I would make a lesson that was, functional for everyone and just go through that. And my planning was 6th period and just go home.
Great, thank you. Let's get Amber Wooten. Tell us, what would you add to that? What does it look like inside of a typical ELA classroom for you?
Well, because I teach middle school, and anybody else who teaches middle school will agree, routine is everything. When you start deviating, you start having problems. So when you get like that comfortable routine, the kids are more likely to stick to it. So when they would come in to my room, they knew coming in that their warm up or bell ringer, whatever you want to call it, was on the board. And that was something they were to do immediately when they would walk in. So they wouldn't be, idle hands and all that. So that's the thing we would start with. And then mini lessons are great. When you got teenagers in the room, their attention spans are a little lacking. So the shorter that you can keep your lesson content rather than just stand up there at a podium and lecture all the time, which is fine, but like with teenagers, less fine. Give them like the skills that they need, let them practice, like release them to them after you've shown them and modeled how to do what you want them to do. Let them practice. Before COVID, I would do a lot of collaboration with the kids. Ori is a big fan with Kagan strategies. If you've ever heard of them before, all of us go through Kagan training. It's really interesting, and it just helps the kids learn how to speak to each other and use academic language with each other. So I would have them collaborate, maybe like do some like back and forth kind of like coaching with them to get them to use that academic language. Then we'd all come back together, do whatever the concept was as a whole unit. And that would take up a pretty good chunk of time. The little, I guess it's like a colloquialism, I guess, for it, is the I do, you do, we do kind of mentality. And it works really well for middle school to have them model, then they get to try it, maybe fail. It's okay because we're coming together to fix it. And by the end, they would have a pretty good grip on like whatever it was that you taught. And my classes last year were exactly 60 minutes. So, I mean, you got an hour to, make sure these kids are prepared with whatever it was that you taught them so you can practice it and refine it for the rest of the week before you assess it later.
Tommy, let me bring you in. What does it look like, sort of a typical ELA day? What would you add to this?
So our English curriculum actually just changed last year. We went to a reading writing workshop, and it's actually something that we're constantly refining it to make it better. We incorporate writing nearly every single day with regards to either prompts or to things that we have read the previous day or even the previous week. And there's always a balancing of here's the text that we're going to be reading, and then trying to use that to create a final product or create a piece of their own writing, whether it's analyzing, whether it's creating narrative writing or argumentative writing. We incorporate both of those fields into our lessons throughout the week. With the hybrid schedule, it's kind of shifted how that looks. It's not as clean as it was last year, I would say. There's definitely some weeks where it's heavier writing that we end up doing. And then the next week we'll get heavier into reading and breaking down texts.
Good, thanks. Tommy brought up the fact that the curriculum changed recently. And so Chris, I want to bring you in on this because you've been teaching for a long time. And so can you just sort of speak to that about curriculum changes and the sort of differences that you've seen? And you've also taught in multiple places, right? I think you taught in Pennsylvania, right? And so you sort of talk about how much and how often does the curriculum change, and how does that have an impact on you as a teacher?
Well, when I taught in Pennsylvania, I taught at a high school, and it was a rural high school, and I wrote the curriculum. So I knew what to expect every year there. It doesn't, last year was a significant change in Horry County because we went to the reading and writing workshop, which is kind of based on the Margaret Atwood model, which I have been using, well, for 20 years, basically. So it wasn't that huge of a change for me. And you don't see major changes to the curriculum as English teachers. We have a panel of people that meet every summer to go through each unit. And some of them may be on this panel, I don't know. Lena, don't you always do that in this? Yeah, okay. I thought I saw your name on that stuff. But for each grade level, they go through each unit and say, okay, well, this story worked really well for this standard, or this story didn't work well for this standard. So they'll switch in and out things. And we have a curriculum map with hyperlinks in it. So even a first year teacher can come in and sit down and look at it and say, oh, well, I can use this, or it has different activities on it, and it has, you know, things that are linked to the standards for each thing. So there's no major changes. They just kind of tweak it. And like Tommy said, we are tweaking the reading and writing workshop model as well. And we'll continue to do that until each teacher has something that really, really works for them. Horry County says, we want you to do it this way, but we're going to let you do it your way in our framework, which I love, you know, so we have freedom inside of the cage, kind of. It's interesting.
Great. And that sort of leads me to another point. I'll bring in Lena on this, since you were saying you meet during the summer to do some of this. So it seems like teaching at the secondary level, the middle level, there's certain standards and things that are set by people who aren't you. And so, Lena, can you talk a little bit about that? How much control do you feel like you have over what it is that you actually teach, and do you ever run into issues with that, wanting to teach something but, you know, having to teach something else?
I don't. And Amber, I think you write curriculum too, correct? I don't, but you know, again, this is only my second year teaching English, but we do have standards, and we say, okay, what's the best way that we can hit this standard in a meaningful and purposeful way for our students? That being said, I do not think that we are limited, or, you know, we have a lot of choices. So there will be like an anchor text where all of us will have to teach the same text district-wide. And then separately, there are mentor texts where we can kind of select between 2 of 3 or 3 of 4, whatever it is. And, you know, the students will model certain skills out of those mentor texts. That being said, we also can bring in other, you know, texts to supplement. Like Thomas and I recently brought in a different text to supplement, because right now we're limited on time. And I think all of us can kind of attest to that, where, you know, we only see the kids twice a week. And I think, you know, at another school it might even be once a week. So right now that is the only limitation that we have, is time. And that's really, at this point, nothing that we can control. But other than that, no, I don't feel like we're limited. We do try to, in the summer, we meet for 3 weeks and we work in a meaningful way to make sure that we're all developing the best and revising our existing maps to make sure that we've got the best for our kids.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So I'm gonna take us in a different direction now. I'm shuffling through different pages of notes over here. So that's why I'm looking down, tapping on stuff a bunch. But I want to sort of figure out how to go about being a secondary ed English teacher. So from our perspective, so the students that are on this call with us, we're all English majors, and so we may think that then we can't become English teachers at that level without something else. So I just want to sort of go through And I'm going to ask some of y'all specifically, knowing what I know about what degrees you had, but to sort of see, how did you get into teaching from the degree that you had? So I know that Chris and Amber both had education degrees. So I'll come back to y'all here in a second, because I want to focus on right now the English majors, who I think most of y'all or the other members of the group were. So Amber Ravenel, you were an English BA major, right?
Yes.
So how did you then go from having a BA in English to teaching at Fletcher Middle School? How did that work?
So in Florida, it's not really like South Carolina, where you have to have taken Praxis 2 in order to get into a classroom. It's a little bit different. So what it is in Florida is that if you have like a degree that is based in a subject, so like English, math, or something that can directly be translated into a class that can be taught in school, they pretty much look at you and they get your transcript. And I just sent my transcript from Claflin and everything that all the classes that I took, and then they saw it, and then they gave me a temporary certificate. So rather than temporary certification rather. So it's not like an actual Florida teaching license, but a temporary one. And they want you to teach for a certain amount of years, and they do like sort of different classes that's similar to the PACE program, but you don't have to take Praxis before you get into their PACE program. So pretty much if you have any base degree, English or math or history or something like that, you can get approved pretty easily. And if you want, say if you're out of field, you can just take the test kind of like similar to their Praxis. So if I wanted to teach early childhood, even though I'm an English major in Florida, I could just take the early childhood test and I will be put in with a temporary certificate to teach early childhood. And you have 3 years to get their license pretty much.
Yeah, very good. So, and that's interesting to know. And I did the same thing. I don't know how many of my students know, but I taught high school English and middle school history for a year, similarly with a temporary license based on my my undergraduate degree. And that was in Tennessee. So I know that a lot of states probably have something similar. Lena, let me ask you, because I know that you got a BA in English. And so did you start teaching right after your BA, or did you do something else?
No, I went right into the MAT program at Coastal.
Yeah, and then so speak about that. So this is a program that we have here at Coastal. So can you tell us, what is the MAT and why did you go?
So it was the Master of Arts in Teaching English program. And it is like an accelerated fast track, master's degree. It was like 15 months, I think it is. So I started in December, and I think it was like I graduated in a year and a half or something, a year and a few months. It embedded in that time was, graduate courses, like 2 observation type placements, and then, a full-blown internship placement.
Yeah, and Tommy, I think you had the same sort of path as well too. So can you, anything to add to that as well about, moving from the BA in English to the MAT, and did you teach first and then go back and get the MAT, or?
No, I graduated in May, and I went directly into the Master's of Teaching program at Coastal. I did have a stint so when I was coming towards the end of my second student teaching. I student taught at Carolina Forest, actually with Lena. So after I finished my second student teaching, I actually got a long-term sub position at Carolina Forest High, where I taught for, I want to say like 2 months, I believe, drama and an advanced drama class or drama 2.
So, Amber Ravenel, so you had that experience of coming from a BA, going into the classroom, and now currently you're in the MAT program. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then so you're so that's sort of a different route that is open, right, to go straight into the classroom, and then the MAT. So is the MAT program then going to give you all of that licensing stuff that you were mentioning that you needed, and what are your plans moving forward with that?
So I'm still trying to decide whether I want, because I have family roots in Florida and South Carolina, so I'm still trying to decide whether or not I want to stay here or go to Florida. But I know it's a whole lot easier to maneuver when you already have a license and you're going to different states, rather than trying to deal with different states, different I guess kind of PACE-like programs that you have to do. So that's my reasoning for why I decided to go and get my master's. I was like, okay, I see that I like teaching and I can keep doing this, so let me go and get my master's and I can come back with all my stuff on my license. So that'll be a whole lot easier to move around as far as being a teacher.
Yeah, and that brings up a couple of questions I want to run by Chris. So one of those is moving states, Chris, because you taught in Pennsylvania for a while before moving to South Carolina. So was that an easy transition? Did you have to do anything specific to, after teaching somewhere? Because you're licensed by the state, right?
Licensing in Pennsylvania is a lot different than licensing in South Carolina. Once you have tenure in Pennsylvania, your teaching certificate is good for 99 years. South Carolina, you have to renew it every 5 years. It was difficult just in everything that I had to send to the Department of Education to get my license. Because of all my experience and everything, I didn't have any problem with that. It was just getting everything together and getting it sent to them. And it was different. I was like, wow, this thing's only good for 5 years. So what am I going to do with this? But I mean, I've already renewed, so I'm happy here.
Yeah. So then let me ask you, Chris, about this other thing of, so you did get a master's, and that's how I know Chris. He was in our Masters of Arts in Writing program here, and he took a class with me actually 1 year. But so do you need a master's degree to be a teacher? And a lot of our panel has, because they took a BA route, and so now they did an MAT. Do you need a master's? How useful is that to you as a teacher?
Okay, well, my route was a little different because I got a bachelor's of science from the United States Navy Nuclear Power School. And then I was in the military for a while because I'm a science nerd at heart. So it's kind of a weird path. When I went to get my bachelor's of arts degree, it wasn't going to be a bachelor's of arts. I was going to get a biochemical engineering degree. And then I took, and Tripthy will love this, I took a Shakespeare class and my life changed overnight. And I said, oh, who is this guy? And why have I not experienced this before? And then I was Bachelor of Arts, and I was like, I think I really want to teach this stuff. So I turned that into a Bachelor of Arts and a teaching degree. The master's degree, I just kind of did for me. I mean, it's nice to have the little step up in pay as well, but I did it for me. Just because I love to write and I wanted new experiences with new professors. Sorry, then the lights went out. Hold on 1 second. And here we come back. With new professors, and when I saw that Coastal had a Master of Arts writing program, I did extensive research, and I saw that unlike where I got my bachelor's degree in English, everybody at Coastal was still publishing and still active in writing and in producing things that I could read. And that is what really attracted me to the master's program. I mean, like I said, the bump in pay, it moves you up a column. So when you retire, you have a little higher percentage, but that's not why I did it. People coming out like Amber, you're doing the right thing. I think getting your Master of Arts in Teaching, because you're going to start off on that other column, and and you can move up further than that as well. It's not required, but I do suggest getting a master's at some point.
All right, very good. And then we only have a few minutes left, and I want to get to this this question because it's one that maybe this word has come up a few times, the word praxis, and I'm not sure how many of our students have any clue what the heck this is. So what the heck is the praxis, and what do you need to do? Amber Wooten, let me ask you. I'll start with you on that. What is the praxis? What is this thing?
Well, the praxis is a set of tests, so it's not like the praxis. There are many praxes. So depending on what age level you want to teach and what content you want to teach, or at Coastal with the middle level program, you pick 2 certifications. So what you're trying to get certified in, you have to take specific tests, and those are all on like the state website and whatnot you can find. But without the tests, you can't get your certification the traditional route. They're kind of like the PSAT or the SAT, like on crack. And and so you have to, some people can get away with not studying most of the time, because I feel like as teachers, we know how tricky test question writers can be. It's best to study for that.
Yeah, and Amber Ravenel, you may be the most recent praxis taker. So what do you have to say about the praxis and like studying for it and what it is?
So I'm currently a GA for the education department, and I actually tutor praxis for praxis core English and reading. And I just study it. Just look at it first. If you haven't seen it yet, please just study. Khan Academy is free for Praxis Core to go in and do the little questions that are very similar to the test. And I had to take Praxis Core reading and writing too in order to tutor it. So yeah, Khan Academy is very similar if you haven't looked at Khan Academy. But as far as the English writing, I bought the like $20 little thing that you buy when you buy the test, and I just looked at all the different, because it'll ask you many different canonical works. And if you haven't seen one that you haven't seen yet, just go and look it up on SparkNotes and make sure that you know at least what it's kind of talking about. So when you get on the test and you're just kind of familiar with it. So that's the biggest thing I would suggest, that $20 little thing when you buy the test, I would invest in it. And it's good for 3 months, I think.
Yeah, and we're having a few other people suggesting that as well. Buying the book, Amber Wooten said a study book is cheaper than a retake. So, so Lena, what was your experience with the praxis? Like, so anything to add to that? So, is it a content? Are there content questions then?
Yeah. So, I did not have a positive experience with the praxis. So for the MA, in each. From what I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the praxis score is different in each state, and the passing score varies depending on, I think, teacher need. If I'm saying that correctly, when I was in the MAT program, I had to take the English content area praxis, and I did not pass it twice. And I remember feeling just so defeated, and there were several of us that did not, but I felt so defeated because some of my colleagues who I'd gone through undergrad with, would say things like, "Oh my gosh, Lena, like, I cannot believe you didn't pass the praxis. Like, you know so much and you say so much in class." And I was like, "Yeah, like, way to kick me when I'm down." Anyway, it took me until the 3rd try to finally get it. And, I know it's different for everyone, but I had a really tough time with the praxis. I ended up having to take a pause in my internship. So it actually took me a little longer because without passing that praxis, you cannot proceed with your internship. Anyway, it is a multiple choice test. And then at the end, there's like a few constructed response essays. The test was different for me every time. And, you know, it did ask a lot of canonical questions about the canonical works, but then there are also modern young adult texts that are in there, and I'm not familiar with every single text. So I think that's, what was the toughest for me is, every time I took this test and I would prepare, it was different every single time. I actually went to Wilmington the first 2 times because it was the only place that had offered Saturday tests. And it wasn't until I finally, took a day and went to Coastal and tested there that I finally passed. But that was my experience with the praxis. I was really terrified you were going to call on me about this test, and here I am. And, I'm human. I think this is a lesson for us all as English teachers, okay? We just got over this personal narrative unit. This is my reflection, okay? So just make sure that you try as best as you can, you study as best as you can, and as Amber said, purchase that practice book, okay?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lena, and thank you for being open and honest about that. That was kind of what I was hoping to hear. That it is, because this is what I've heard. My wife was an education major and struggled through with the praxis as well too. And yeah, it's tough, right? But you've all made it through the praxis. It's doable, but it is something to be aware of, especially for us. English majors that may not be as familiar with, education type stuff, not coming through an education program. So we're out of time, so I don't want to hold us over anymore. I haven't seen any questions come through in the chat. But if anyone does have any questions or thinks of some questions later, please feel free to email me. And I will try my best to get in touch with members of our panel and get some of these questions answered for us again. So I just want to say one more time, a big thank you to all the members of our panel. I really appreciate y'all taking the time out and sharing your triumphs and your struggles and being open with us about what it looks like to be a teacher. Just giving us all this information to know that this is one more thing that we can do with an English degree. We may have thought by becoming a BA in English, I don't have an education degree, so I can't go into, teaching at the high school, teaching at the middle school. But clearly, and many of y'all on the panel did, and it's definitely something that's available. It's something that's available right away, too. You don't have to wait and get a Master's of Arts in Teaching, although that's a good step and that may be a necessary step down the line. Like Amber was telling us, you can go right in with a provisional license and teach for a couple of years to sort of see if this is just something that you want to do. So it's a good thing to have around. So I really appreciate y'all. Thanks everyone to come out. I don't have any announcements about the next English Future Speaker Series, but we will have some starting in the spring semester. So be looking for some emails about that once we get back in the semester. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to squeeze one into January because we're going to be starting later in the month than we normally do. So we may be February before we have the first one. So looking forward to seeing all y'all after the break. And once again, thanks to all of our teaching panel. I really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone